Hello, everybody. I'm Doug Cohen here for the fourth episode of Ask the Attorney with attorney Mark Mandell. Today, we're going to be talking about what you can do if you've had your driver's license suspended or revoked as a result of drinking and driving. Obviously, a very important topic. And so I'm going to bring Mark in right now. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Doug. How are you doing? Good?
I'm doing okay. You can tell my voice is a little scraggly today. I'm just getting over, a little bit of a bug, but hey, you gotta press on and get things done, right?
All right, well, let's start talking law.
Let's do it. All right, so the first question I'll open with for you here, Mark, is let's get right to it. What's the number one reason people's license gets suspended for drinking and driving?
Good question. Well, generally, you could be charged with three different drunk driving charges. Operating while intoxicated, that's a first offense. If, in fact, you are charged with operating while intoxicated, your license could be suspended, a hard suspension for 30 days, and then put on a restricted license. If you're charged with your attorney can work out a deal with the prosecutor of an operating while impaired, which is the lesser charge of any drunk driving, that would be a restricted driver's license as opposed to a suspended driver's license. So there's the difference between operating while impaired and operating while intoxicated. From there, it gets worse. If you get two offenses within 7 years and you're charged with driving while intoxicated, second offense, your license would be suspended for 1 year, suspended. And if in fact you were to get three, that would be a felony and your license would be revoked. So as it relates to the driving privileges and being charged with the drunk driving, those are generally the three different areas you're looking at as it relates to your driving privileges. But what often we see, usually on a first offense, and you had asked me the question before we went on air, well, should I take the test or should I not take the test? And of course, that's up to everybody's own choice if you're going to take the test. But there is a statute called the Implied Consent Statute. And when you go to the Michigan Secretary of State and you get your driving license, all right, that isn't a right, that's a privilege. And part of that privilege, unbeknownst to most people, ignorance of the law isn't an excuse, is that you are agreeing to take the test if the police pull you over at the station. If you choose not to take that test, all right, that's a violation of the Implied Consent Statute, and your license could be suspended for a year. What you do have the opportunity to do, irregardless of whether your attorney worked out an operating while impaired or pled to an intoxicated, separate of that, with the Secretary of State, you're going to lose your license if you didn't take the test for 1 year. You get one chance on a first offense to go to the circuit court and do what we call a hardship appeal. And separate of the criminal matter, you could appear before a circuit court judge and in essence say, Judge, this is my first offense. I'm a good person. I work hard. I've completed a substance abuse evaluation, which the court would require. I don't have a drinking problem. If I do, I'm taking all the proper measures. And Judge, please let me have a driver's license so I could, one, go to and from everything that's been ordered by the court as a result of my sentencing. And number two, get to and from work. Because let's face it, if you can't get to work and you can't get a paycheck, then you're going to have a hard time complying with everything that the court ordered you to do as it relates to the sentencing. So that's pretty much the big overview picture on what you're facing with result to the criminal charges and not taking the test when you're pulled over.
So the not taking the test when you get pulled over, that's a pretty big factor. I mean, it starts right then and there in terms of how the thing can play out, huh?
Absolutely, because the law on a first offense operating while intoxicated or impaired does afford you the ability to have a restricted license at some point for some time. But you're hurting yourself big time if you don't take it. And we touched on this a couple episodes ago.
Yep.
But nowadays, between emails, fax machines, there's always a judge on call in the jurisdiction that you were pulled over. So if you don't take the test, because you're working under the premise that they'll never know how much I drank, they are immediately going to get a search warrant saying that you refuse to take the test, that you show signs of intoxication. They're going to email that or fax it to a judge who's on call for the evening or the day, and that judge is going to sign the search warrant probably within 5 minutes. And now the police are going to take you to the nearest hospital to draw your blood, and they're still going to find out what your blood alcohol level was. And you've really hurt yourself because you're not going to be afforded any of the privileges that you may have received through a first offense operating while intoxicated or an impaired. And, you can go to the website. And if you put up the website, again, I have it all listed under alcohol offense crimes, the driving privileges, and what you may or may not be afforded.
Yeah, absolutely. And the website will be the website is available here on the Facebook page, and it'll be available in a comment after the fact. This broadcast, if you're watching it on replay, will be here, and you can still comment and join the conversation, even if we're not live. And we will still respond and continue the dialogue in the comments afterwards. So for anybody watching this on replay, feel free to continue and join in and engage, even if you didn't catch it live. While we're at it, so let's move on to another question here. So after all of that, if you've gotten to the point where your license has been suspended or revoked after a second or third offense, it's gone. Then what? What's your next step?
Yeah, that's a great question. That usually occurs on people that have second offenses because their license would be suspended for a year, or on a third offense and it's revoked. All right. At some point, if you want full driving privileges, you're going to have to go to the Secretary of State, separate of the circuit court, separate of the district court. You're going to have to go to the Secretary of State and ask for restricted driving privileges. A lot of people will ask me, well, if we go back to the Secretary of State, can I get full driving privileges? And there's a caveat with that. And the caveat is when you go to the Secretary of State asking for full driving privileges, or for that matter, restricted driving privileges, the Secretary of State has a laundry list of requirements that they're going to ask you to do. And if you comply with those and you get your license back, you're going to start off with having an alcohol ignition interlock on your car for what I like to say an indefinite period of time. Usually you're looking at a minimum of 1 year. You're going to have to show the Secretary of State that while you were driving on the restricted driver's license, you had no alcohol violations, because they will install a machine into your car. And every time you turn the car on, you're going to have to blow into that machine to make sure that there's no alcohol. So to take a step back, all right, many people call me after a year, maybe they had hired another lawyer on a drunk driving, or they're clients of mine. If you hire me, I roll in any Secretary of State issues, part of the fee as it relates to driving while intoxicated, second offense or third offense, and I'll represent them at this, what's called the Driver's License Appeal Division hearing. All right. When you go before the Driver's License Appeal hearing officer, it's an attorney, usually a former prosecutor. They're not in the business to, I'm not trying to say that they're disrespectful, but they're going to come at you with a lot of questions, and there's a lot of requirements. You need a lawyer when you go before the hearing officer. I can't tell you, Doug, how many people in the past have hired me because they went in front of the hearing officer without a lawyer. Because the way the requirements of what the Secretary of State is asking for, if there's any conflict or anything that would show that maybe you're not being credible, they'll do what I call, they'll flop you, and they'll deny you a license saying you're not being truthful. So here's sort of the list, because I know you had mentioned you were curious about what all the requirements were.
Well, actually, before we even get there, I just wanted to, something that you just said, I want to hit on that I thought was interesting. When you go before that hearing, their intent is to grill you and to find holes in your story and to try to see if they can find ways to hurt your credibility. And that's probably why people underestimate how important that is to have an attorney with them, right? I mean, that's their job. Those guys are good at doing that, right?
Right. And they're requiring a lot of documentation. So one, you're going to have to fill out basically it's about a 10 to 12 page questionnaire. And that questionnaire is going to refer to whether you had one drunk driving, two drunk drivings, what was your blood alcohol level, a lot of questions about your past. But they also want documentation of sobriety since you were arrested. So in addition to the questionnaire, by law, you're going to have to go see an outpatient therapist, somebody that's licensed, and they're going to meet with you, and they're going to have to fill out a form, which you can get online, and it's a substance abuse evaluation. And so you're going to have to meet with a therapist that says, hey, Doug Cohen hasn't drank. He's done everything that the courts asked him. I think that if there's any alcohol issues, they are in remission. They will make a diagnosis. There's varying degrees of diagnosis. You could be diagnosed as an alcoholic or alcohol abuse. In any event, you're looking for a positive substance abuse evaluation. Clearly, if your evaluator wrote up an evaluation that says you have a serious drinking problem and you continue to drink, you're not going to get past the substance abuse evaluation. So you need a good substance abuse evaluation, and it needs to be credible. You need not to be drinking. Then the next requirement, they are going to ask for at least a minimum of 3 letters from people that see you on a daily and or weekly basis. They're not looking for an aunt or an uncle or a friend that saw you 3 months ago. They're looking for people that interact with you on a weekly basis. And that person's going to have to write a letter. They're going to expect it to be notarized, signed, and dated. All requirements to make the letter valid. And in that letter, not only do they want to hear that they have seen you on a daily and or weekly basis, the most important part of that letter, as I've always said, because so many people will write wonderful letters on behalf of whoever's going before the hearing officer, how much their life's changed. I always like to sort of exaggerate, like they've cured cancer, destroyed the plague. None of that matters. What really matters is that person in their letter specifically says that they have not seen the individual applying for the license consume any alcohol, period. It's the most important part of the letter. So a lot of people who go in there without lawyers, their moms or dads or wife or husband will write great letters like this. Turned out we took a lemon and turned it into lemonade and things have been great. We're moving forward in life, but it doesn't talk about the alcohol. You need a minimum of 3 letters, signed, dated, and notarized, that all specifically address that they see you on a frequent basis and that you haven't consumed alcohol. And if you don't have more than 3 that meet that requirement, they'll deny you. So you need a positive substance abuse evaluation. You need to fill out the questionnaire, and you need the 3 letters at a minimum.
So let me ask you a question, because part of the theme of some of the topics we've covered have been, a lot of crisis and a lot of things you see when it comes to addiction and the opioid epidemic and drinking and alcoholism and all of these things. Do you see, the fact that they need 3 signed letters from people who see them every day, or that whether it's from a therapeutical standpoint or can vouch for the fact that their lives are getting back on track? That process, the system that's in place, do you find that sometimes people whose lives may have gotten a little off track and had found themselves in this situation, that those things actually help them get their lives back on track? Like, does that part of the system work to help people? Because if people have followed all of those steps, that means they're getting help, right? I mean, do these things work to help them get their lives back on track? Do you see evidence of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I look at that as it is before and after. Clearly, the laws of drunk driving are there for a reason, to deter people from drinking and driving. The reality is, if in fact you have been caught, all right, the judge will sentence you appropriately, given your life's past. I mean, if it's a second or a third offense, the sentencing is going to be worse. But everything that the court is doing is trying to put them in a better position, and most importantly, make sure that it doesn't happen again, because it does. And that's why there's driving while drunk driving second offense, and habitual third offenses and all of that. So to specifically segue into part two, you shouldn't be drinking. You should be doing the right things. You should be getting help. And the driver's license is so important because it's a little counterintuitive. You got caught drinking and driving. All right. Now you've been penalized, but you have to go to court-ordered, whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous, substance abuse, counseling, whatever it may be, community service. But if you don't have a driver's license, how are you going to get there? How are you going to pay the court? How are you going to pay the lawyer? So I do believe there have been proactive steps by the Secretary of State and the judicial system for people to have an opportunity, in this case, what we're talking about, the Driver's License Appeal Division, to go before somebody and show that they're doing all the right things so they can get their driver's license back.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, hey, there's a couple of people in the room. Ross DeGroff said great stuff, and Deb Klein said hello.
Oh, very good. Hello, Deb.
If we have any questions from anybody who is in the room, we can pause here for a minute to take a question or two. And otherwise, I think we've covered the topic pretty well, and we can get ready to wrap it up. So while we're waiting to see if any questions roll in, unless you have anything else to add, Mark.
No, I just think the topic is informative. I think everybody needs to know about it.
Yeah.
Driving privileges are so important after you've been caught for a drunk driving, and making sure you're taking the right steps is imperative. It really needs the advice and counsel of an attorney. I'd highly recommend to everybody that, if you're having driver license issues as a result of alcohol, or for that matter, any other reason that requires you to go before a hearing officer with the Secretary of State, my number one advice would be hire an attorney.
Well, Mark, we have one question here. Deb Klein wants to know, what if sentencing requirements weren't completed due to lack of rides? No follow-up with that?
That's a great question, Deb. As it relates to the Secretary of State and their requirements, that may be a mute issue. As it relates to the court that you've been sentenced in front of and the judge that's sentencing you, failure to complete terms and conditions of your probation are a probation violation. And my phone rings off the hook on people that either didn't go to counseling, didn't do the community service, haven't paid the fines or costs. And probably most importantly, the number one reason why people call me for probation violations is because they've been drinking. And the courts, I don't know of a court, a district court or a circuit court on a drunk driving that isn't requiring some form of testing. And if you violate, the judge clearly has the ability to put you in jail. And there are numerous courts, at least here in the metropolitan Detroit area, that's going to give you 7 to 9 days. Again, you should really hire an attorney to put you in a position to explain to the judge that, we are all human. People will relapse. I often find that some people are just not buying into the court's order of sobriety during the year and trying to sneak a drink. And that'll cost you. It'll cost you in front of the judge. It may cost you with an attorney. And it could have an impact on your driving privileges as well.
Great stuff.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Deb.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Deb. And Deb, as a follow-up, Deb said she already suggested letters of recommendation be done and to hire an attorney. So, okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks, people, for joining in live. Thank you, replay viewers. Once again, put in your comments. The dialogue will continue. Please visit the website, which we will have here. It's on the Facebook page and in the comments. And while you're at it, connect with Mark on Twitter, as well as subscribing to the YouTube channel where past episodes of Ask the Attorney are all going to be, as well as here on Facebook.
Yeah.
And all of those links will be here available for you. Thanks for tuning in, and join us next time right here on Ask the Attorney. Well done, Mark.
Yep. Thank you, Doug.
All right. Thanks, everybody.